Okay, quick apology to start. I started a series recently, Katana versus, are katanas still the best swords ever, specifically compared to, well, they're not newer sword designs, but there's been a renaissance in the use and practice of those styles of swordsmanship. So yeah, comparisons are being made, and that question's coming up. Now, in part one, I said, well, you know, it's going to be a two-part video, and the more I think about it and work on it, the more I realize if I want to take my best shot at distilling my long experience and questionable expertise, hopefully adding something constructive to the conversation, it's going to be more than two parts. Now, I already did kind of a peripheral topic that we're going to come back to, which is pragmatic versus ritual martial arts, at least in my experience, and swordsmanship. And it's going to come back in discussions of the use of the different kinds of swords, specifically the pragmatic side more than the ritual side. However, today I wanted to take a couple of videos. I'm going to go ahead and film them and put them up back to back to look at one thing about the design of the Japanese sword among many aspects of the Japanese sword that have kept it particularly near and dear to my heart for 45 years. But in part one of this video series, there's going to be a massive trigger warning. If you guys have heard that, you know what it means. So if you're not into guns, don't like them, whatever, I understand. Please just turn this video off and go straight to part two. Otherwise, let's proceed with my rather sideways analogy, shall we? First off, as always, safety. Clear, clear, finger off the trigger, always pointed in safe direction. 1911 platform. Like Japanese swords, one of the weapons platforms that is very near and dear to my heart and has been for a long time. Well, why? Similar reasons, and also a lot of other things that, at least in my head, make this a great analogy. You'll have to let me know in the comments what you think about it. A lot of history in this platform, and a lot of history in that history, which includes even some national pride, right? A lot of people feel like this is a massive evolution in the history of handguns. It's the first one ever. Absolutely not. But even that evolution happened in some stages. Maybe some people forgot those transitional models. This was considered a major leap improvement, technological miracle in manufacture, design, craftsmanship, all that stuff. Now, has developed rabid fan base. Okay. Also a rabid base of detractors who compare this to other firearms available on the market today and think this is obsolete, outdated, inferior. Okay, I kind of understand both sides. But that doesn't make this any less near and dear to my heart. Let's talk about some of the reasons why. Well, some of it, beyond just the history and the other things I've already mentioned, there is for me in all weapons that Harry Potter effect. You know, I talked about that in a previous video. Harry walks into the wand shop in the first book, first movie, picks up just that right wand, the lights shine down from the heavens, and all the magic happens. Right? This kind of has that for me. Well, so do a lot of other weapons, unfortunately. I'm a little fickle that way. But yeah, the way it feels, the way it operates, trigger pull recoil management, some of the inherent accuracy in, well, a lot of the models. Yeah, but there is also one other thing very particular about this platform over the decades for me that makes me just that extra comfortable with it. Let's go back to history. For a long time, there weren't many people producing them. After World War II, and even the Korean War and things like that. Yeah, there were a couple of companies out there. So it was kind of hard to find one. If you can get one from the one or two companies that was still making one, yeah, they're kind of pricey. Otherwise, you'd be looking for an antique. And for me, an antique that I was comfortable using and potentially abusing. I was intending on giving it hard use. Okay, that's going to sound like my shin gunto, right? All right, you've seen this before. This is Murphy. Murphy was made in World War II. Now, when I got Murphy, it was not for the historic value. This was about 35 years ago. I was looking for a good, useful, high-quality 1911 at a decent price, and he fit the bill. I got him for a steal, and he was in pretty rough shape. It sounds like my original shin gunto, right? We could be talking in many ways about the same weapon. The previous owner, however, had already made certain changes and upgrades that started killing, shall we say, the historic value to it. So that played into not only some of the things I liked about the particular weapon when I picked it up, but also made me more comfortable with making my own changes. For instance, he had kind of tuned it up, tightened it up, replaced some parts to turn it into a match quality gun, which included new barrel, new bushing, new sights. And he put a new trigger in it and some other things. He also did something that I've seen, in the old GI manuals. If you can see that, there is this kind of classical... It's a punch stippling of the forestrap. It goes all the way down under the wood. I added the wood. That's my touch, or one of my touches. And as I mentioned in the previous video, yeah, the finish was in terrible shape. So something I could feel comfortable putting to a lot of use, but more so, yeah, I had some problems with it. Just like buying a used car. You tend to be more comfortable buying a good used classic car if you possess the tools and the skills to work on it. And here's the point of the video. Modification. I am comfortable with this weapons platform. This is a modern version. This was one of the first Rugers that they ever put out on the market, and I scooped it up because it was at a great price. Again, like the Katana market, for a long time, it was either antiques or a couple of high-end makers who were putting out new ones, but then suddenly, in the last 3 decades, there has been a boom in different companies, manufacturers, making so many different versions of the weapons. So now there's a lot of handgun companies out there making versions of this platform that range from really high-end craftsmanship pieces that you pay for to much more affordable, entry-level, maybe with good, potential, and everything in between, depending on your tastes and your budget and what you like. Now, Ruger, for instance, has a reputation of overbuilding things, making them super, super tough and pretty good mechanical quality. However, they have a reputation for kind of, shall we say, sometimes rough fit and finish out of the factory, and this was no exception. A lot of things I like about this weapon, how solid it is. It is, if you know about 1911s, this is a Series 70. It's something that appeals to me. I liked a lot of the controls and upgrades that were already on it. I made some changes to it. We'll look at that in a second. But one of the first things I did, it was really gritty. I have the talent to go in there and do some polishing and refitting. I consider my talent level an armor level of talent, not a smith level of talent. Probably use those words a couple of times in this video. So, what was once a gritty gun is now smooth as glass, like a much more expensive version. I am also comfortable completely disassembling this thing, not just field stripping it, but getting into the fire control mechanism, taking this thing down to the frame. I can do it in about 5 minutes, and I can put it back together in about 5 minutes with, well, maybe a little cursing. And if I want to make it function better for me in certain ways, there's a lot of parts I can change out, and that's another boon that occurred with Murphy in that era. It was hard to find parts, and there was no internet to find parts. So, it was what I could mail order or find in the stores. Today, you can go online and pretty much replace every part of this gun, either with a functional replacement or something much nicer, and I can do that work myself, making those new parts fit. Now, for instance, one of the things I did that way is the trigger on this particular one is what's known as a short trigger. It came with a long trigger. Now, I have stubby little fingers, as I mentioned, so I really like a short trigger. It cost me about $30, and, maybe an hour worth of fit and finish. It's worth it. I put new grips on it. I have also rounded off some of the sharp, unfriendly bits that were on the outside, and otherwise, as I said, in general, tuned up this gun so it operates for me like a much higher end, but very customized piece for myself. Makes me love it even more. I certainly hate to part with it now, even though I didn't spend a lot of money on it. It had a lot of potential out of the box, and I had the talent and the resources to make it something even better. And the same thing with Murphy, okay? So consider that. Swords. I reviewed this Ronin Italian arming sword. Gave it a good review. I like the sword. Kind of gives me that Harry Potter thing in terms of the feel. I like using it. I like the way it feels. It's pretty good quality modern reproduction in my mind. It's sturdy. It might be a little rough in certain places, basically like the Ruger I was just talking about, right? It seems to be tough. It's really sharp. If anything, it has a lot of potential, but I can't do much about the potential. Peened construction, which is traditional and sturdy. If I want to change anything about the way the sword looks or feels, there are a couple of outer cosmetic things I can do to it, but not a lot. Also, just like the 1911 platform, putting guns through a lot of use and abuse. Well, first, if you get one used, you don't know what condition it's in. It might already have parts that are about to fail, right? Just like a used car. Now, with a sword, even a new one, or a firearm, even a new one, depending on the quality of the build and the parts and what you do with it, yeah, parts might start to fail. If anything fails on that 1911, assuming the frame doesn't shatter, I can fix it. Might cost me a little time and money, but I'm confident that I could fix it, and that means something to me. This thing, anything starts to get loose or fail, I can't do anything about this. I don't have Smith level talent. I have armor level talent, but it doesn't include being able to deal with a peen weld. So yeah, you guys know anything about a Japanese sword? Well, you know that you tap out a couple of pins, right? Or maybe just one pin, a little tappa. The ska comes off, and then, you know, everything else on this end of the sword comes off, and you can replace things. Now, this is my original shin gunto. And like I said, just like the 1911, I got it because I wanted a good one. There was an affordable antique that already had a lot of wear and tear on it. Got it as a good deal. Seemed to have a lot of potential. I liked the way it felt. Harry Potter moment, right? But after a couple of decades of trying to keep this thing together, to preserve the original parts as much as I could, yeah, one day in practice, the Ito crumbled like Thanos snapped it, and then the ska core finally came apart. It took the same with it. Just crumbled the same. Yeah, and back then, no internet and no wealth of replacement parts. So I had to make do. Thankfully, I could salvage all of the metal parts on the sword, including the blade, and also thankfully no one was hurt in the catastrophe. But I had to make myself a new ska core from scratch, which I did out of hardwood. Now, that probably made it more difficult to shape and fit, but I feel like I got a sturdier core. Yeah, I didn't want it to fail again. That also gave me a heavier core that changed the balance of the sword in a surprising way that I liked. Didn't have same, replaced it with some nice silk brocade that I thought was at least, it made it look Tachi-like, if not Gunto-like. Wrapped it in, yes, I couldn't get Ito. I didn't have anything in my area, any sources I knew for getting Ito. So I wrapped it in leather. Now, you know, as you've kind of guessed, I'm comfortable working in leather, and I like the way it feels. So that has served it very well. Is it historic? Is it gorgeous? No, but it's functional. Now, just as an illustration of, you know, the evolution of my skills, one of the things you might notice that I didn't actually for several years, Fuchi versus the Koiguchi, yeah, they don't really line up. So they're even on the bottom, but they should be more centered, and maybe one day I'll go back in and fix it, but frankly, fixing it means making a new ska core, and I'm not looking forward to it. So maybe one day I'll do that, but for now, I just kind of put up with it because I've created something that's functional. Not only does it feel good, but I'm confident in how tough it is. And that makes it extra appealing. Something after that catastrophic failure, I could fix myself. And kind of had to learn how to fix myself. Okay? Back to firearms really quick. What about other kinds of firearms I like? Well, a lot of it is based on that Harry Potter feel. And reputation, history plays into that. Aesthetics play into it. Just like anything else in my taste of weapons, but you know, I tend to have a special place in my heart for weapons that I can work on. Certain kinds of semi-automatic platforms, certain kinds of revolvers. For instance, in the previous video, I showed you my single-action revolver. One of them that because of my injury, I replaced the hammers on to allow me to hopefully reach it a little easier. I could take a single action revolver, talk about classic design with a lot of history, strip one of those things to the frame in about 5 minutes, put it back together in, well, maybe 30 minutes with 6 extra hands and a whole lot of cursing. I can do it though. I don't look forward to doing it, but yeah, there's something about doing it. Now I also have handgun platforms I like the CZ platform. There's certain work I can do on it, but something about that fire control mechanism just scares me, and I'm not willing to like dive in and try to take one of those apart. If something on a gun like that fails, I'm going to have to send it to a smith. And it's not just the money that makes me uncomfortable with that. There's something about being able to do it myself that just I can't replace. Now, are there certain other sword designs I can work on? Well, yeah, things we'll talk about later with threaded construction, which a lot of people think is an inferior construction. But like I said, there's certain things about the Japanese sword that just the fact that I can take them apart, maintain them, repair them, refit them, tune them up, modify them, beautify them myself, that makes them that much extra special. So part 2, we're going to go back through some of the swords I've already shown you and show you some of my modifications. Hopefully it will be interesting and maybe inspiring, and you might get some insight into some possibilities, potential out there if you're getting into the katana market, where you might consider getting something a little bit rougher, low end, that's got a lot of potential because it's affordable and you're not worried about abusing it, and you might be able to make a work of art out of it in the process that's very much yours. Okay, on to part 2. Trigger warning over.